Hello and welcome to the 3-time award-winning Tough Girl podcast, which is all about motivating and inspiring you while increasing the amount of female role models in the media. I'm your host, Sarah Williams. If you love adventure, challenge, and hearing from women who share their stories and provide top tips and advice to help you take on your own personal challenges, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out. New episodes go live every Tuesday at 7 a.m. UK time, with bonus episodes happening on a Thursday. You can support the Tough Girl mission by signing up as a patron by visiting Patreon, patreon.com/Tough Girl Podcast. Keep listening until the very end as I share more information about what's going on with me, with Tough Girl challenges, give shout outs, and recommend other Tough Girl podcast episodes. More information can be found at toughgirlchallenges.com. My name is Sheridan, but I kind of go by Dr. Sheddy. That's what all my social handles are. I'm a veterinarian and I'm currently living on my sailboat in Mexico. And basically we sail around and deliver free veterinary care to animals in remote communities, in particular boat access only communities. We're definitely going to be talking about Mexico and the amazing work that you're doing. But I am hearing, obviously, an Australia. Oh, God, I'm going to be mortified now if you're actually a New Zealander. And I'm like, oh, no, it's an Australian twang. But where did you grow up? Did you grow up on a farm in the countryside? Have you always had like an affinity for animals? Did you always want to become a vet?
Yeah, no, you're right. I am Aussie, so you got it right. Yeah, I grew up in a small beach town, and for anybody who's been to rural Australia, you'll know when we say small, we mean pretty small. Like there was about maybe 40 houses in the town, like a very small store to buy kind of milk and bread, and that was about it. So I grew up by the ocean and definitely always had a real affinity for animals. I used to rescue the frogs and the magpies and basically any critter that I would find that I thought needed rescuing. Sometimes I think they genuinely needed it. Sometimes maybe less so. The frogs in particular, I think, were rescued against their will, but they would come and live inside with me for a day or two and then I'd set them free. And I always wanted to be a vet since as long as I can remember. Mum said I first started saying to her I wanted to be a vet when I was around 5 years old. So I don't even really know exactly what made me want to be a vet, other than the fact that I've just always loved animals and I've always had, encyclopedias about animals and books on animals and just always loved learning more about them and being around them.
How many years were you in school for?
Vet school in Australia is a little easier in terms of length. So, I obviously did grade 1 through grade 12. And in high school at that time, it was pretty difficult to get into vet school. So, I had to do physics and the high level maths and chemistry, biology, like all of those kinds of subjects, which sometimes was hard because, my friends would be doing physical education or art and I'd be kind of stuck in physics, watching them out the window playing soccer and be like, I wish I could do like some other subjects as well. But, they kind of put you on a very strict path to get into veterinary school. So I was doing all of the kind of science and math subjects. And then the university I went to was a 5-year degree. I actually graduated high school when I was 17 and turned 18 in the last month of my first year of veterinary school. And in Australia, as many of you might know, 18 is when you can start drinking and going to nightclubs and that kind of thing. So I actually did fail that year and had to repeat. So for me, it was a 6-year degree, but the school did have a 5-year degree. So I graduated quite young at only like 22, 23. So I was quite a young vet when I graduated.
Oh my God. Can I say thank you for sharing that? Because it's so easy sometimes to gloss over the more like not as socially acceptable, like failing one of the years, but that is really young. So graduating at 23, did you did you have an area of interest of where you wanted to work, like which particular type of animals? Did you have that figured out then at that age?
Yeah, well, I thought I did, because as it's turned out, I haven't really stayed on that path. But at that stage, I had gotten a pet cockatiel and a pet budgerigar while I was at vet school, because I didn't want to, commit to a dog or a cat while I was moving around and things like that. So I got 2 little birds, and one of them actually, I accidentally ran over his foot with the computer chair. They used to be on me and around me all the time. They were kind of free range in my study room. And I rolled back on my computer chair and the little bird was behind me and his little foot went under the computer chair and it actually stripped the skin off of his toe. So I had to wrap him up in a little bandage and like drive with him in my shirt to the university hospital where I went to school and took him into the hospital. And it was a big, very well equipped hospital with a lot of great veterinarians, and nobody knew what to do with a bird. And we had surgeons, we had oncologists, we had cardiologists, all these people with all these amazing degrees and extra study. And everybody was kind of like, oh, a bird. And that was in my, I think, third year of vet school. And I kind of decided in that moment, I'm going to specialize in the animals that nobody else is seeing. So, and obviously having birds myself, I really learned about how much personality they had and how sweet they could be. So I decided I wanted to kind of have a focus on exotic animals at that point. So, birds, reptiles, that kind of thing.
What happened to the bird?
He was okay. They basically put this huge bandage on him that was like, it was very really difficult for him to live with. And we made him like like the Elizabethan collar that you put on a dog after surgery. We made one of those out of like a piece of cardboard and put that around his little head so that he couldn't chew his foot. And then I took him home and I dropper fed him water with cordial in it and fruit juice so that he would get, enough hydration because he wouldn't eat, and get him some glucose. And he slept on my chest the whole night in my hands. And I did that every few hours, would give him, water and glucose, and just basically cuddled him all night. And in the morning he ate and I took the bandage off and there was no more bleeding. And a week later he was fine. He recovered really well. So I also learned that birds were really tough because there's kind of a myth in vet medicine. Everybody always says, oh, birds just die, so nobody wants to treat them. But the reality is birds are so strong, they don't show symptoms of being unwell until they're really, really, really sick. So it always seems like you can't save them because they're coming in at such a later stage of disease. But in reality, they're very strong little critters. And so that was also a good learning experience to realize how tough he was despite such a big injury for such a little creature. So yeah, luckily he was fine.
And does Australia have many exotic animals? I know it's probably got a massively huge percentage of the amount of dangerous animals in the world. But what about exotic animals?
Yeah, so obviously, with wildlife, we've got a lot of great wildlife: koalas, wombats, crocodiles, snakes, all of that stuff. Obviously, a lot of those can't be kept as pets, but I also worked with, zoos and wildlife sanctuaries, so would treat them. But there is actually quite a big reptile and bird scene in Australia where a lot of exotic birds are bred in Australia. So things like macaws and African grey parrots. And those birds can be very expensive. Like to buy an African grey parrot can be, $5,000 or $10,000 or even more for a breeding bird. And then there's also a lot of people who are really into reptiles. So for example, I've treated a red-bellied black snake before, which is a very venomous snake. I've seen carpet pythons. I've seen a pet lizard that was really funny. It was a sand monitor. So he was a really big lizard, maybe not quite a meter long, but like a big lizard and heavy. He weighed multiple kilos. And the owners used to bring him in on a leash. He was really tame. They'd carry him around like a baby. So there's definitely a exotic pet scene in Australia.
So when did the sailing come into your life? What age did that happen?
So that was quite late. I'd actually never sailed before I had been on the boat I still live on. So it was kind of an initiation of fire. My partner at the time was into sailing, and we wanted to travel more, and I wanted to start branching out more with my veterinary work and kind of do things a bit differently. And so it kind of seemed like a good way to be able to travel and keep all my vet supplies together. So that's kind of how I got into the sailing. And then when we eventually went our separate ways, I actually kept the boat because I loved it so much. So that was 8 years ago. So I guess I was around 28.
And tell us about the boat. Is that Chuffed, the boat?
Chuffed. Yeah, exactly. So you'll get it. It's hard. Most Americans don't know what chuffed means. So for anybody listening, that's not British or Australian. It's kind of slang for happy or pleased. Chuffed is a 37-foot monohull. So that just means she's got the one hull. It's an aluminium boat and she's quite unique. There was only 8 of her made. She was made in 1990. So she is an older boat. And being aluminium basically means she's very lightweight and strong, which is good. And she also has the ability to put the keel, which is kind of the pointy bit going down below the boat, up inside of her, which means we can go into really, really shallow water, like waist deep water with her, which can be really useful when we're visiting areas that may not be so well charted or well discovered. So we can go into areas without such a risk of, hitting the bottom, hitting rocks. She has hit rocks before and has survived fine, just got a little bit of paint scratch. So it's a really good boat for exploring and doing what we do.
And with the work that you're doing, I might be making assumptions, but I'm assuming that people can't necessarily sort of afford to pay for treatment or for you to be paid for your work. How do you fund your lifestyle?
We have a social media and a YouTube channel, and we also have a Patreon page, which is essentially a kind of crowdfunding platform for creators. So we have regular subscribers to the Patreon page and the YouTube channel, and then we also have people who make once-off contributions. But everything we do is funded essentially through social media. And yeah, you are right that the places we visit generally are hours and hours from veterinary care. And many of them, like I said, are boat access only. So not only are they hours from veterinary care, but if you want to go to the vet, you're climbing into a boat to get there. So that can obviously be particularly with say a cat, they're not real keen on going on a long boat trip to the veterinarian. And even for the dogs, it can be a bit scary. But it also tends to be communities that are pretty under-resourced. So definitely communities that might be living day by day, and it can be very difficult for them to afford veterinary care. Although veterinary care is cheaper in Mexico, it still is expensive compared to what people might be earning.
So just a couple of random set the scene type questions. Yeah. Have you got any animals on board the boat with you at the moment? Do you have your a pet dog with you, for example, that you travel with? Or, a cat. You probably have a cat on a ship, wouldn't you?
Yeah, a lot of people do have cats, actually. And there are a lot of boat dogs, too, and a few boat parrots we've met as well, actually. But no, we don't have a pet. We would really like to, but it is difficult on a boat because obviously they either need to learn to go to the bathroom on the boat or you're having to take them to shore all the time. So if you have inclement weather, it can be kind of scary on a boat for an animal and also difficult to get them to shore and things like that. But also being Australian, it's very difficult to bring animals in and out of Australia, especially Australia is a rabies-free country and Mexico is not. So animals need to go into quarantine if they ever go back. And so although we do live on the boat and it is our only home, we do regularly go and visit family, and then it makes it difficult to bring a pet with us. So for now, we are pet-free and just get all of our animal joy from our patients.
And just more of a practical question, just because I'm being quite nosy, how does it work with the drugs that you have on board for the animals? Does that cause any issues with customs?
No, so we always work with local veterinarians. So that's basically how we do everything. We get local veterinarians involved as well. So usually we get local veterinarians to come to the locations with us. So if we're doing things like spay and neuter and using medications, like anesthetic medications, we have local veterinarians come as well who are licensed to use those medications in the country. And then the more, I guess, things like vaccinations and, flea and tick, worming, those kinds of things, those are much easier to carry on the boat. And we do source it all locally, again, working with local veterinarians so that we always are working under the umbrella of somebody to be able to deliver those medications.
And how has it sort of worked with the sailing? Have you been nonstop sailing for the past 7 years or whatever?
I wish. I wish I could say yes. But no, we tend to be on the boat kind of 8 months of the year because we tend to leave during hurricane season. So just because it's obviously not as safe to be on the boat, but also it gets really, really hot where we are right now in Baja, Mexico. It's hitting, 45 degrees every day, which is really uncomfortable on a boat during hurricane season. You're either fighting a hurricane or the killing heat. But also we spent 2 years doing a major refit of the boat. So we had her out of the water. And at that stage, so I bought the boat in Panama and it was very cheap and in pretty bad condition. And then a couple years later, I met my current partner, Jim, who was working as a at a surf hostel in a really cool spot in Costa Rica. And my boat was kind of stuck there, falling apart at the time. And we met and I basically said, do you want to come help me fix this boat and keep doing what I'm doing? And he said yes. So he left his work and came with me on the boat. And we essentially limped up the coast to Mexico where it was a little cheaper to fix the boat, got her out of the water and kind of thought it would take us about 3 months to fix the boat. And then about 2.5 years later, it was finished. It was actually during COVID. So we got her out of the water just before COVID. And then that all happened. So that caused some delays. But we stayed with the boat the whole time through the pandemic and basically did like a top to bottom. Everything was pulled apart. Everything was painted or repaired or replaced. So it was a really big renovation basically of the boat and rebuild to get it ready to sail again.
What is the biggest, weirdest, strangest animal that you've worked on?
I think the biggest, weirdest would be a polar bear. He's actually, yeah. He was actually a polar bear with a little bit of grizzly in him. So they were people call a golden bear. So he was about like close to 600 kilograms, I'm pretty sure. He was massive and kind of mostly looks like a polar bear with a slight golden sheen, like a blonde polar bear. And that was, I lived and worked in China for a couple of years with a bear rescue center. And he was actually kept at a Chinese aquarium. And so he wasn't a bear we rescued, but he started having vomiting symptoms and they didn't have veterinarians who were specialized in bears at the aquarium. So they called us and I went over and it turned out that he had an umbilical hernia. So he had a little hole in the muscle where his belly button was, and a piece of his intestine had gone through the hole and twisted, which meant he was completely blocked up and nothing could go through, which is why he was vomiting. And the only way to fix that is with surgery. So I had to dart him. So basically through the bars of his cage, I had to blow dart him to anesthetize him. And then we had the rule that whoever anesthetizes the bear is the one who goes and checks that the bear is truly asleep. So I basically had a very long pole and poked him through the cage a few times, and then he was seemingly asleep. So I waited and poked him a few more times from a distance, then went and did a closer check, and luckily he was asleep. And he was so big that the aquarium had a hospital on site, but for some reason, this was somewhat typical of some of these like fast-built aquariums in China and zoos and things. They had, for some reason, built the hospital on the second floor and they only had stairs. And so there was absolutely no way to bring a 600-kilo polar bear into the hospital. So I ended up doing the operation on the ground, kneeling next to the bear. So we had him all draped up, like imagine, like a sterile hospital, but everything's on the ground. He was on a drip. He had all these drapes over him and things, but operating kneeling. And basically had to remove the piece of his intestine that had slipped out of his belly button had actually died. So I had to remove it and then stitch his intestine back together. And he survived, which was pretty amazing because it was a very long surgery and a pretty difficult surgery. But he did very well. So all in all, it was successful. But that's definitely one of the most crazy things I had to do.
That's absolutely, like when you said like polar bear and then mixed with a bit of grizzly and it's like a golden bear. I didn't know that. That is just amazing. Like,
yeah.
Wow. And what would be so I mean that's a pretty weird one, isn't it? But
yeah.
I almost feel stumped now because I want to ask you more questions about that, but I don't think anything can beat that story.
It was funny. When I first met my partner, Jim, that was actually the story. Like I first told him and he was like, oh, I might like this girl. So I always joke it's my go-to story to impress people.
Well, it works. It's seriously impressive. That's amazing. So you're sort of in Mexico at the moment. Like, do you have a bucket list of where you want to head to next? In with regards to, I'd be hitting the Caribbean, Oh my God, you're at Galapagos Islands.
Yeah, that was on the list for a while actually, and may one day come back on the list. For now, our kind of immediate plan is in the last 2 years, we've been in a similar area in the Gulf of California on the Pacific side of Mexico. And it's a really beautiful area and a very nice place to have a boat. But there's also just a lot of fishing communities and remote communities that kind of need us here. So for now, we've basically been slowly making a loop of this whole area of Mexico and identifying communities, then returning to them, doing vaccines, spay and neuter, anything they need, and then kind of revisiting a year or so later so that we can then follow up and make sure everything's still going well. And then, any new puppies, any new kittens, get them also vaccinated and spayed and neutered. And every time we do it, we kind of then hear about additional communities that need us. And so slowly the list is growing and growing. And so essentially we're planning on being here for the next couple of years potentially, or at least the next kind of 18 months, so that we can identify these communities and visit them, but then also look at trying to set up a longer term solution. And this is something that's been really important to us throughout the journey is, it's one thing to go in and vaccinate and spay and neuter the dogs, but then if nobody ever goes back, the problem will eventually just return. New dogs and cats come, they breed slowly. Maybe there's one or two you missed, and then all of a sudden, a few years later, the problem's the same as when you first went. And so our kind of goal here is to not only do what we're doing, but eventually make those connections between the community and the local veterinarians so that then the local veterinarians can continue doing what we're doing and then kind of leave an area and start again somewhere else doing the same thing just to try to make it more sustainable.
In my head, this is seeming as though you've got a really, and I hope it is true, like a really nice sort of work-life balance. Like, you sail, you go somewhere, you do a couple of days work, stay for a while, connect with communities, you can move on. Like, are you getting a work-life balance? Like, or is it just like constant moving and constant stress?
No, definitely work-life balance is really important to us. Part of the reason that I've done so many different things with my career is because every job I had before this one, I would end up burnt out, whether it was physically or emotionally in some way or another. The first job I had, when I graduated, there's currently a veterinary shortage, but when I graduated, there was a veterinary surplus. So it was very difficult to get work. And so I ended up in a pretty rural town of Australia working for a clinic that didn't always have the best reputation in terms of how new graduates in particular, so new veterinarians, coped in the environment. My boss he was a nice man, but was pretty old school and really believed in, pulling yourself up by your bootstraps kind of thing. And so I was working Monday through Friday, 8 till 6, and then Saturday, 8 till 12, and then Sunday, 8 till 12. And I was on call and then I'd be on call 3 to 5 nights a week, which meant that if there was an emergency, which sometimes there could be like 3 in a night, I would also be at the clinic throughout the night. If there was a sick dog that needed to be checked, I would go back into the clinic at midnight or 2 a.m. or stay with them through the night. So after 2 years of that, I was like completely burnt out. Like I was just exhausted. I was bursting into tears, when cases wouldn't go well, because that sometimes happens. I felt like I wasn't always making very good clinical decisions because I was so tired. And so I left that clinic and went to another one, and it was an improvement, but that culture still existed, that real, in veterinary medicine, there can be this real superhero culture where, generally we are people who are very empathetic. We're generally smart and have done well at school, so we're high achievers. And that sometimes can be used within the clinic to kind of breed this culture where everybody stays later than everybody else. And, that's how you kind of show you're a good worker and that you care and that you're a good vet. And it really does just lead to burnout because we're experiencing, a lot of our patients have had trauma. There's a lot of emotional, baggage that can come with working with animals because obviously their owners love them and can be pretty distressed and upset when things aren't going well, or even if things are going okay, but their animal's injured or sick, that's very stressful for them. And so you're dealing with that as well. And then there's also what we call moral injury, where sometimes we're getting a patient in that we know we could save, but the owners are unable to afford the care the animal needs. And then we're having to turn them away, and that's very damaging. And so I just kind of experienced this for a few years. And that was when I decided that I was going to only work for charities, and then eventually kind of discovered my own thing with doing what we do, where, we don't always get to deliver the gold standard of care for animals because obviously we don't have like an X-ray machine on the boat. I can't run blood tests sometimes and things like this. So but I can always give the very best care that's available, which I think is so much better for the soul, I guess. So it's definitely that was kind of a really big period of growth and a really big factor in making sure that we have such good work-life balance now, because I really do think it makes me so much better of a vet, because I have the emotional capacity and the physical energy to really put into each patient what they need to be really healthy, which I think is really important.
Yeah. Oh no, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
When you started talking about your hours, I was literally just like, okay, 8 to 6, that's quite long. And then you carried on going. And on a Saturday
Yeah.
and on a Sunday. Oh, and I'm also on call. And you can get what? That's just it's not. I'll go on my say it's not okay. It's not okay.
No. And that was also, I think, the disadvantage of graduating at 23. I didn't know how to set boundaries. I didn't know, I hadn't really been in the workforce so much. So I didn't really know what was okay and what wasn't. And so I just kind of was like, all right, this is how it is, and it really shouldn't be. So, I learned a lot from it, but I'm very glad that I'm doing this now and that we can have such a good work-life balance. And we definitely do schedule things if we know we're going to be doing a lot of spay and neuters, which can be a bit more physically demanding and also mentally taxing because you're really concentrating on surgery, we might only schedule a couple of days of that, and then we'll really make sure that we have a few days rest where we can kind of take a step back and not do veterinary work and catch up and, make sure the boat's okay and that kind of thing. So we really do try to balance it well.
Yeah. And go surfing and swimming and
yeah.
I think this is an awkward question to ask. Do you eat animals? Do you eat fish? Are you a vegetarian?
I was a vegetarian for quite a few years. And then when I started living on the boat, I did start eating fish again because we do fish. And I suppose
ethically caught, and you know how to kill a fish. So
yeah. It's still, I'm not gonna lie, I don't feel great about it. When I do the killing, it definitely does have a slight ugh. But when I did really well as a vegetarian while I was living in Asia and Australia, but I found in Central America and Mexico, it's quite a bit harder to find enough varied protein sources. And my partner and I both got typhoid fever when we were in Mexico, very early on. And it's I don't know if you've heard of Typhoid Mary.
No, what is it?
Typhoid Mary's some story from the 1500s about this woman who gave everybody typhoid fever. So it's
I thought that was an STD.
Yeah, no. It's a very old disease that, doesn't exist in many parts of the world anymore. And we got it, and it's really bad. You get it's gastrointestinal. So you're vomiting a lot. You can't keep food in very well. But we didn't know what we had for a while, and we're both already quite lean people, and we lost a ton of weight when we had this. And we eventually got treated and got better, but I just couldn't gain the weight back. And so that was one of the other reasons I started eating more animal-based protein, because I was just too thin and couldn't gain it back on the diet we were getting in Mexico. So yeah, in an ideal world, I would like to be vegetarian. And when we do have access to the things that can make it a bit easier to be vegetarian, like the soy-based products and different things like that, I will eat more vegetarian. But yeah, for now, I am eating fish, and I do eat chicken now as well. It's a slippery slope. But for now, no red meat.
Sorry, the typhoid fever, is that always going to be with you? Can it flare up again at any time?
No.
Stress, for example?
No, it is a bacteria. So it did get killed by the antibiotics, but the antibiotics also killed most of our good bacteria as well. So there was probably a good kind of 3 to 6 months where we weren't quite right afterwards. And it took quite a long time to restore all the flora and kind of put the weight back on and get back healthy again. And we were also doing boat work that whole time. It was during COVID. It was during the period of time we were, fixing the boat. So that area of Mexico has 80% humidity, 35 to 40 degree days every day. So I'm sure that didn't help either. But yeah, we did eventually recover and thankfully now don't have any symptoms or anything. But it took a while for sure.
I mean, on the positive, if you got through COVID, battling the gastro thing together, and if you're living in quite a confined space with each other, That can only be a good thing in if you know, if you can.
Yeah, no, for sure. We've got a very strong, good relationship. So
Where's the sort of one of the most remote places or the most sort of remote islands that you've headed to or that you've managed to sort of explore on Chuffed?
one of the more interesting areas we went on Chuffed that was very remote is this. It's a small rock island called Isla Coyote, and the islands around it are uninhabited. And only, I think there's 11 people that live on the island and 2 dogs. And it really is like a rock. It's quite interesting to see because it's mostly stone, and then these little houses are built along the side of it. And basically, they have a desalinator. So they use the desalinator to extract salt from the seawater, and that's how they get their drinking water. And they have solar panels on all of the houses, and so they're completely off grid, which a lot of the communities we visit are. They're like so remote that they no power, no cell service, everything's solar. Yeah, you get your fresh water either from an oasis, like a spring oasis, or the sea. So that was a pretty cool place to visit. The 2 dogs were very healthy. One was an ancient Chihuahua that really wanted to kill me, but otherwise it was a really nice visit and cool to see how they live. It was a fishing community, so they mostly get their income from fishing.
I mean, you do share a lot of, like YouTube videos. Like that's one of the ways that you earn income is through the views and through Patreon. How do you keep connected then when you're traveling? How do you get Wi-Fi, or how does that work for you?
So when we're in like larger towns, like right now we're in La Paz and we do have cell service here and things like that. So it's relatively easy here to get Wi-Fi and connected. But when we're in the smaller communities, we can go, there are a lot of uninhabited areas between us and the small communities too. So we do spend a lot of time in uninhabited areas. And when we're there, we just disconnect. So we don't have any way to contact anybody. We have a VHF radio, which gives us like a 30-mile radius of being able to contact other boats. So for emergencies, we can use that. We also have an EPIRB, which is like an emergency location device. So if there was ever like a really true emergency, like the boat sinking, we can set that off. But otherwise, we will sometimes go like a good 7 days just completely disconnected. And it's funny, it sounds hard, and it can be. But once you get used to it, it's amazing how you almost dread coming back into reception because there's going to be emails and WhatsApp messages. Like you're going to just get all of this stuff coming through. And it can be really nice to just disconnect for a little while. But we've also found Starlink is getting really common on a lot of boats and in a lot of remote communities now, where they can set up this satellite and have like high-speed internet in the middle of nowhere, and it can run off solar power. So in the last year or two, a lot of these really remote communities we've visited, the local restaurant, there's almost always one restaurant in all of the small communities. And what seems to be happening at the moment is the restaurant gets Starlink, and then it becomes kind of like the local hangout for everybody because you can get the internet there. So we, funnily enough, in one of the places we visited late last year, ended up sitting there uploading, like a 4 gigabyte episode onto YouTube at this little restaurant in a town that, doesn't have power. They don't have any connection to the grid. It's completely off grid. So yeah, it's definitely getting easier and easier, slowly but surely, to stay connected.
And how can people support the work that you're doing? Because, obviously it is incredible work. Where are you most active on the social media?
So YouTube, I guess, is where, people can watch episodes and really know what we're doing. Our YouTube channel is Vet Tales, like tail of the dog, Vet Tales, Sailing Chuffed. We're also pretty active on, Instagram and Facebook, which is Dr. Sheddy, the sailing vet. But in terms of providing support, financial support for the work we do, our Patreon page is where people can sign up. We have a monthly Patreon. I think it can go as low as, $5 a month, something like that. So not much more than a cup of coffee a month. And then we put that money towards keeping the boat going and funding all of our animal projects. And our Patreon is patreon.com/Chuffed Adventures. So we've got a few different names floating around on the internet. But for the most part, if you Google the sailing vet, I will come up. So it's not too hard to find me.
Awesome. And I will put all of those links in the show notes so that people can connect and find out more about you and watch YouTube videos and support you via Patreon as well. But I would love for you to have the final words of advice, final words of wisdom for other women listening who I'm really inspired by what you've done by, following your passions and your interests and combining them together and for, living life on your terms. Apart from just do it, what advice would you like to share to encourage other women to take those types of steps?
Yeah, I think one kind of fun thing to do that I really like, I love a good Venn diagram. There's this thing called a purpose Venn diagram where it essentially has you go through the things that you love doing, the things that you're good at, the things the world needs, and the things you can be paid for. And you essentially just list everything, like everything you love, everything you could be paid for, everything that the world might need, or even not necessarily the world, but like, even more immediate, like what does your community need? What does your family need? What does, people need, that kind of thing. And essentially you then just see what things overlap and use that to help get some ideas of things that you could do that would help you align a little better with your purpose. But I think for a lot of people, what makes it hard is, for me, it was relatively obvious what I could do, right? Because I'm a veterinarian, I can help animals. And so that's like a fairly obvious connection. And I think for some people, when they don't have like a really specific career path like that, they feel like there may not be ways for them to help. But the reality is everybody has a skill. Maybe you're really good at taking photos and you can visit rescue centers and, help get photos of all of the dogs that are up for adoption. Maybe you're really good with like technology and can help people set up websites or, visit remote communities and help them get connected and different things like that. There's always something that we're really good at that gives us joy to do. And I think just finding that thing is sometimes the hardest part. But once you've found it, kind of trying to pursue that is really good. And even if it's not something, I know that not everybody can just sell everything and drop everything and sail away on a boat like I did. But even if it's kind of like a hobby at first or something that you're doing on the side, I think having something that really fulfills you in your life and that really does give you that sense of purpose can be really, really important and really help with our self-growth and kind of help make the world a better place too, which I think is really important.
I love those words of advice. And I'd love to just ask you, where do you see yourself going over the next 5 years? Have you thought that far ahead? Do you know what you'd like to achieve?
We always, we kind of have a saying on boats where plans are best written in the low tide in the sand because they just wash away and never seem to work out. But so we always our plans are always very fluid. But our kind of the immediate future, like the next, like I was saying, next 18 months, we'd like to continue where we are here in Mexico, trying to set up a more sustainable long-term solution to what we're currently doing, visiting these communities and things like that. Longer term, though, we would like to stay on the boat. In an ideal world, I could see it being that this boat may eventually get a little small for us. So, in terms of dreaming big, one day eventually having a slightly bigger boat that might allow us to take like additional volunteers, additional veterinarians, veterinary nurses, students, that kind of thing, to kind of expand what we do a little bit could be really cool. And maybe moving our base, like we were saying, like, the Galapagos, the Caribbean, the South Pacific, Asia, there's so many places to go. So perhaps moving our base somewhere else eventually could be cool too. But yeah, as things grow, we mostly would like to continue doing what we're doing in some capacity or another. So that's kind of the plan for now, which, like I said, we're always flexible.
Dr. Sheddy, thank you so much for coming to speak to us on the Tough Girl podcast. It's been honestly amazing to hear about your life and your passions and your interests and how they've combined together. I just absolutely love it. I think it's just so inspiring. And I can't wait for our listeners to hear your episode. And just best of luck with all the future adventures and challenges and sailing and animals that you save. Like, just incredible work that you are doing.
Thank you so much for having me. It was really good to chat to you.
Hey, tribe, how are you all doing? If you're in the Northern Hemisphere, I hope you are enjoying the glorious sunshine. We've made it through winter. We are smack bang in the middle of summer, and I, for one, am absolutely loving it. For those in the Southern Hemisphere, I hope it is not too cold. And if it is that cold, I hope you're enjoying the winter pursuits that brings you. So talking about vets, what a cool livelihood. How amazing is it? The incredible work that vets do. Big shout out to Dr. Sheddy for sharing more about her life and the amazing work that she is doing on her sailboat Chuffed. and helping all the incredible animals. So we have actually spoken to a lot of veterinarians on the Tough Girl podcast, and I actually did a little search on my website because that's what I have to do now because there's so many episodes, and a name popped up and I was thinking, gosh, I haven't spoken to Cal for ages. So Cal Major, she is a vet. She's a paddleboarder, surfer, environmentalist, member of, Surfers Against Sewage. And we first spoke with Cal back on March 2018. So this is what we said. So Cal is a stand-up paddleboarder, surfer, ocean lover and vet. Increasingly upset by the amount of plastic waste she was finding in the ocean, she wanted to connect people to the harm that it was causing by, moreover, to empower people to make positive changes to help prevent it. So she turned to adventure. And in 2016, she stand-up paddleboarded the entire Cornish coast in a bid to demonstrate the problems surrounding single-use plastic water bottles. A 260-mile epic ocean voyage. In 2017, she circumnavigated the Isle of Skye, 400 miles of coastline on a paddleboard. And she also had a great palette challenge planned for 2018. So I haven't actually had a chance to catch up with Cal yet, but please do go check out her website, calmajor.com. She's also recently just started a podcast, which is very, very excited. But in 2018, she became the first person to stand up paddleboard from Land's End to John O'Groats, 1,000 miles over 2 months, raising money for mental health charities and delving into our connection to nature and how vital that is for our well-being. She also holds a Guinness World Record for that as well. In 2019, she did some stand-up paddleboarding and free diving in the Maldives with an amazing group of local women for turtle conservation. In 2020, she did the UK's longest river, stand-up paddleboarding, I believe, the Severn Source to Sea, a plastic journey from inland to our sea. And 2021, stand-up paddleboarding and dive around Scotland, the ocean and its wildlife role in the climate and biodiversity crisis and our human connection to and interaction with it. She's also created a number of adventure films. So if you are interested in vets and the amazing work that they are doing around the world, if you visit toughgirlchallenges.com and type in vet, it will pop up all the different veterinarians who are also adventurers and what they are doing. So absolutely love it. So go and check it out. Like Jasmine Paris, she's a very famous ultra runner. She came on and spoke to us about the 268 mile spine race. She's qualified vet. We've also got another ultra runner, Rebecca Devereaux. She's an active member of Black Trail Runners. She's also a vet as well, and they actually both graduated from Liverpool University, but different years, a little bit of time in between graduating. So yeah, please go and visit toughgirlchallenges.com. On the website, there is a search function. You can search, for the areas that you're interested in. There's also a dedicated resources page for a whole variety of different topics, from ocean rowers, polar explorers, Olympians, explorers, expedition leaders, skiers and snowboarders, paddle sports, etc. So please do go check that out. The episodes go live every Tuesday at 7 a.m. UK time. I'm trying to get about 6 episodes out per month, so occasionally there'll be bonus episodes being released on a Thursday. Thank you to all of the incredible patrons for supporting the work that I do. It really does make a difference having a regular source of income coming in. It allows me to fund the running costs for the website and for hosting the Tough Girl podcast. We are coming up to 800 episodes by August, which is incredible. And you know what? The thing that still amazes me, I've not even scratched the surface, because, to be honest, I can go back to all the women I spoke to in 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018 and see what they've been up to over the past 6, 7, 8 years, because some of the women are still working in this world of adventure and challenge. They're still advocating for animals, for the environment, for wildlife, for women as well. They're still sharing their story. They're still encouraging other women. So I still have a lot more work to do to continue sharing these stories. And if you'd like to support their work, then please do visit Patreon, patreon.com/Tough Girl Podcast. All that's left for me to say is, wherever you are, whatever you are doing, give it your all, give it 110%, get after it, go for it, believe in yourself, because I believe in you. Take care, lots of love, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye.